Not a lot on the mainstream news about the latest Boeing fail issue. We're going to find out what is going on with the 777X and Boeing's corporate health on this episode of Taking Off. Hi, I'm Dan Milliken, and Boeing has another fail. This one has been going under the radar in light of the Starliner problems, the door plugs, the 737 MAX, take your pick. But let's get to a significant development that has occurred in the last few weeks at Boeing and is not really being talked about. Let's talk about the 777X, the plane Boeing has said is the world's largest and most efficient twin-engine jet. Also, let's take a look at the books for Boeing and see if they have the financial stamina to weather out all the storms. Let's dive in. All right, the 777, the 777, has been a great thing for Boeing. Beginning service in 1995, the 777 has been the best-selling wide-body aircraft. And in an effort to make a great plane even better, Boeing has been re-engineering the 777 to make it larger, more efficient. Highlights of the 777X are larger area inside, more efficient design, upgraded, everything. I mean, avionics, passenger comforts. I mean, really, check out this bathroom. But one of the biggest upgrades, the most powerful jet engine ever made, the GE9. A pair of these beauties will power the giant twin. The engines are stronger, faster, and even quieter. It can produce up to 110,000 pounds of thrust each. A successful design will make a huge impact in the wide-body commercial jet market. Certainly a better operating choice than equivalent four-engine options. The plane features the new engines, new carbon composite wings that are a lot longer, and I mean so long they have to come with wingtips that fold up 11 feet off the end to be able to fit in at all the gates. The project started in 2013 with a projected date for entering service for 2020. As delays plagued the program, as delays seem to do, the first prototype didn't roll out until March of 2019. It first flew late to January 2020, with deliveries pushed back to 2022 or 2023. Then with COVID, delayed until 2025. And by the way, there are 481 orders of this aircraft on the books. Estimated sticker price of $300 to over $400 million. 481 orders. That's some big math, and I'll let you do that. As the 777X testing has progressed, there are 4 aircraft completed that are being used for testing. In addition to the 4 test aircraft, there have been 22 already built and being stored, with another 6 in various stages of production as of July 2024. All of the jets that have been built will have to include reworking any changes determined through the testing. One note about the testing and certification. In the past, this has taken on average about 18 months from first flight to certification. The original 777 took 12 months. The 77X, 4 years and counting. On July 13th, 2024, the FAA granted the green light to begin a sequence of tests needed in order to win the approval of the 77X to be able to enter passenger service. This sequence expected to take about 18 months, and the tests will be done on the 4 aircraft, which leads us to the issue that's not been hitting mainstream media yet. The thrust link issues. With the biggest, most powerful engines, Boeing has added titanium reinforcements to secure the engines to the wing mount. The titanium bars attach to the fan frame and carry mechanical loads to the aft engine mount. These are called the thrust links, and each 777X includes 2 fail-safe thrust links for the redundancy. WH-001 is the fleet leader, and as of August 29, 2024, has 840 cycles and 1,800 hours. WH-002 has 507 cycles and 1,200 hours. WH-003 is in Kona, Hawaii right now, and we'll get to number 3 here momentarily. WH-004 only has 62 cycles and 178 hours. This past week, it was discovered on 4 that cracks were found on the titanium thrust links on one of the engines. That led to the inspection of the other 3 test aircraft, and cracks were found on all of them. The discovery of cracks on number 4 were especially disappointing. The flight time is extremely low, which means it's a manufacturer issue, and the supplier to Boeing is unknown at this time. None of the 4 airplanes have been flown enough to incur really any fatigue yet. Boeing is working on returning 3 to Seattle from Kona, which involves removing the engines at that remote location and replacing the new thrust link assemblies, all remote out there. But the 777Xs are grounded until this can be addressed. Boeing was once known for quality, for ushering in the age of commercial jet travel, of giant beauties built to be the safest, most advanced planes soaring through the skies. Now the slogan is, if it's Boeing, I'm not going. What led to this devastating turn of direction? Well, experts point to a philosophy that was years in the making. Executives with bonuses and income tied to stock performance, that leads to decisions that might have short-term stock value gain with long-term dire quality consequences. Now, Boeing says that's not true, that safety and quality are always a top priority. Then CEO Dave Calhoun told stockholders in October of 2023 that they've added a rigor around our quality processes, hiring tens of thousands of engineers and mechanics, and most importantly, worked hard to instill a culture of speaking up and transparently bringing forward any issues. That was in October. And then a few months later, a door plug blew out of a new jet that had been delivered just 1 week after Calhoun's speech. And I'm not even going to talk about the deaths of whistleblowers, so I'll leave that for the comment section. One aerospace analyst put it this way when comparing Boeing to Airbus. One company is saying we're going to build a lot of jets, and the other is saying we're going to lobby the Pentagon and Congress for defense dollars. It's a big contrast. Well, here's Calhoun in an interview on CNBC.
That forecast is getting more and more robust every day, and if we can get some help from the Congress and move some bills through, we will ultimately realize those gains.
Bottom line is a culture that prioritized delivery over investigating any issues brought up during manufacturing. This is what has led to Boeing's slide. Since 2019, Boeing has lost $33 billion. That's simply mind-numbing. And 2019 was the last time Boeing posted a profit. The stock is down by almost a third just this year. The 737 MAX debacle cost the company more than $20 billion so far. Boeing pleaded guilty on July 9, 2024 to one charge of conspiracy to defraud the United States for its role in the 2 fatal 737 MAX crashes. What Boeing is pleading guilty to is that during the process of certifying the 737 MAX, it withheld information about a design flaw from the FAA. It's a hit for Boeing, but also a near miss. The agreement avoids what surely would have been harsher consequences. Now it'll pay $487 million in fines, far below what the families of the deceased are seeking. The other consequence is that Boeing will have to operate under the oversight of an independent monitor chosen by the government for the next 3 years. And while the victims' families cried foul over the deal, the Justice Department says the consequences were the most serious available. This resolution protects the American public, the Department of Justice said in their statement. The most recent plunge in commercial aircraft manufacturing for Boeing was at the beginning of the year. On July 5th, the Alaska Airlines 737 had the door plug blow out in flight. The cause, they never put the bolts in. Clearly a manufacturing quality issue. Orders plummeted at the beginning of 2024. The only bright news was a rare win in orders over rival Airbus in July, in which Boeing received orders for 72 planes to Airbus's 59. July is the big month for the commercial airliner manufacturers. The big show at Farnborough is where the bulk of the orders are made for the year. To put it in perspective, Boeing's gross orders on the year stands at 228 for the first 7 months of 2024. Last year at this time, Boeing had 579 gross orders. Boeing has delivered 218 commercial jets in 2024 so far. Airbus is at 400. And really, delivery is the key number. Boeing doesn't get paid until a plane is ordered for the most part. Things got so bad for Boeing, with losses tripling to $1.4 billion in the second quarter alone over previous second quarter, that they removed Calhoun, the CEO, and got a new one at the end of this July. As I covered in the Starliner report, Robert Kelly Ortberg, the former CEO of Rockwell Collins, a supplier to Boeing, became the new CEO. And his first step was a crucial one and reversed what many felt was the beginning of the Boeing slide. He moved his office out from the Chicago bean counters and back to the Pacific Northwest, where the real work is done. Ortberg comes from the engineering world, not the finance side. And while this is a positive step, it doesn't guarantee success. The leader at the helm during the 737 MAX design was also from the engineering side and not finance. Right now, the company has nearly $47 billion in long-term debt. If Boeing debt rating drops, the cost to borrow will soar and will hurt the manufacturer even more, which could lead to a death spiral. Ortberg has his work cut out for him. But the financials are not all doom and gloom. I turned to a financial analyst to dive into Boeing and see how they're really doing. Joseph?
Over the last year, according to their 2024 financials, they had a $11 billion year-over-year increase between 2022 and 2023. The majority of those increases not in their defense contracts, but rather in their commercial airplanes. Their net loss altogether was about $2 billion, which was about $3 billion lower than the previous year at $5 billion. And over the last 3 years, they've had losses. And I believe actually over the last 5 years, they've had $33 billion worth of losses, which is, I mean, gosh, it's hard to sustain when you have $33 billion worth of losses. But they do make a lot of money. They do make a lot of money in terms of revenue. And certainly when you look at their assets, which we're about to go over, it's not as bleak as it may seem, although it is still pretty bleak. So a lot of part of their assets are their inventory. So in 2023, they had about $79 billion worth of inventories. And this makes a lot of sense considering the fact that, with airplanes, they're very expensive. So they have a lot of built up inventories. And in addition, when you look at their short-term liabilities are around $22 billion, and these are largely spread between things like accrued compensation, which is retirement, pension, that sort of thing, which is going to be an important thing that we bring up here in a second, as well as their accrued interest payables, which is for the loans and notes that they have in the short term, but also for the interest that they have to pay for their long-term notes. So currently, as they stand right now, they're about $10 billion lower in terms of net cash liquid versus their liabilities, which means that if they had to pay all of their loans today, all of their liabilities, short-term liabilities today, they would have to liquidate something. They're in a really tough spot in terms of they've built up a significant amount of short-term liabilities. In addition, they have about $47 billion in long-term liabilities, and you look at their assets, their inventories, and you're like, great, like they could sell all of those and settle their debts, but that's not really the case, given the fact that they're under inspection for multiple years. So overall, if you look at their current trajectory and their burn rate between $2 to $5 billion over the last 3 years and their current cash, rationally, logically, they have enough to run for years. Their liabilities with the upcoming concern for their inspections are considerably alarming, but theoretically they have the cash and inventory to sustain considerable down years. But they still have about $20 billion a year in revenues for government contracts. So you would think that the government would be willing to bail out Boeing if they were to go bankrupt, although that's still a very bleak picture. There are very concerning pieces, one of them being their stock. So if you look at the last 5 years or so, they've lost about $110 billion worth of market cap from their stock. And over the last year or so, they've lost about 30% in value on their stock. Although it has stabilized over the last 3 months, clearly public perception of Boeing has dropped significantly, even in just the last year or so, which is considerably alarming. And considering some of the more recent news that's come out, one of them being that, about 32,000 workers are threatening to go on strike for better wages, better retirement, better compensation, better PTO. So if they can't change this in the short term, it becomes very difficult to believe that they're going to be able to sustain the level of spending that they're at. It's incredibly alarming. Do they get bailed out? You would think so, but it is not a for sure. So Boeing is going to be really interesting moving forward. And can they sustain these types of losses? Can they get past it? Because if they cannot maintain the current trajectory that they are right now.
At the end of the day, I said it in the Starliner report and I'll say it here. A strong Boeing is important to this country. They employ tens of thousands, and that reverberates to all the suppliers and their employees. I hope they can turn it around, but the change of culture takes longer than the change of a CEO, and I hope Boeing can survive long enough to fly this 180 in quality over profits. Ortberg has a balancing act. On the one hand, probably terminating a large portion of the managers and leaders is what will need to happen to change culture, but you also don't want to lose all that experience and cut off your nose to spite your face. But he'd better hurry. This whole thing sounds like a ticking time bomb. All right, thanks for watching, and thanks to our sponsors who make reporting like this possible. Supporting them supports us, like 67 Designs. I use their mounts in both my car and plane. They're great for phones, tablets, and cameras. Check them out at 67d.com. They're proudly made in the U.S. I visited the manufacturing plant. It's amazing. Talk about quality. What they're doing is great. Check them out. Also zvision.com. The brightest landing and taxi lights, I just put them in Lola, my Cessna 210, and they are amazing. All our sponsors are run by pilots, and you can check them out in the links below. Support the aviation family. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't seen our in-depth report and summary of the Starliner problems, check that out right here. Remember, superior judgment trumps superior skill. Take care.